Restoring the Father's name Yahweh. Restoring the Messiah's name Yahshua. Re-establishing Torah covenant. Preparing the bride. The revealing of the sons of Elohim. Prophecy. The return of Melchizedek, the royal priesthood. Elijah's school of the prophets. The Way Ministries. A return to the Philadelphian spirit.
Okay, let's open in prayer. Abba Father, blessed be your name and the name of Yeshua HaMashiach. Abba Father, I have a burden on my heart, and the burden on my heart, Abba, is I'm tired of seeing your people hurt. I'm tired of people that I'm watching that have these strongholds in their lives that they just don't know and don't seem to understand how to break through the cycle of defeat that they're going in their lives, Abba, with these things. And I'm praying, Abba, that you pour your Spirit out upon your people and to take out the stony heart, Abba, and to give them a heart of flesh that you will cause them to walk in your Torah, to walk in your statutes and judgments, and to do your will, Abba. It is so sorely needed, Abba. I know that you've got to be looking down and feeling very, very discouraged at the state of your people today, Abba. Because I feel it, and I know you've got to feel it more. And I'm just praying, Abba, I don't know what it takes other than that you begin to change the heart of your people and help them to understand that the things that they've held on to into the past must be let go. That the true light of Yeshua HaMashiach and the true love of Yeshua HaMashiach might come through, that we as a people can be a light to the nations, Abba. Because people are not going to be drawn to darkness. They're going to be drawn to light. And your people are going to have to exhibit that light. And I pray that you do that for me as well, Abba. That you help me to circumcise my flesh each and every day. Even now, Abba, as I'm about to give this message. Help all of us to circumcise our flesh. And not to entertain our flesh anymore, Yahweh. But to be a people of you. A people of Yeshua HaMashiach who have the power of His Spirit and the power of His blood covenant, Abba, that makes us effective as your people. That the people you're calling out of this world will see that light and come to that light. So we just want to bless you and thank you for being here with us on this Shabbat. We thank you for the fellowship. We praise for the praise and the worship, that we have that privilege, Abba, to be able to do that. So I ask now, Abba, use me in whatever way that you can to speak your word of truth, that it might be a word of encouragement, although it might be a word that's a challenging one as well. So I thank you, Abba, in the name of Yeshua, for your people that are here today, Abba, that your Spirit will use them to edify the rest of the body in whatever gifts that you may have given them. In Yeshua's mighty name, amen. Amen. Well, we're continuing on in the epistles of John, and let me just cue this up. And after going through this and trying to finishing this up today, or early this morning, I basically came away with the idea of achieving the spirit of the Philadelphian. What I feel John is really trying to get across is that in order for us to be successful and not fall into the pitfalls of what John has been instructing these fellowships, these congregations, is that we must try to strive to achieve the spirit of a Philadelphian. We need to have that spirit. I'll get into a little bit more of that later, but basically what is driving me in this particular thrust today is that I've been so discouraged in seeing so many people who are going through so many different troubles. And at the end of the day, a lot of the troubles that I see them going through are troubles where they have strongholds in their lives and they're unwilling to let go of their past. And if you can't let go of your past, you cannot seize your future. And I often say that your past does not have to be your future. Your future is whatever you choose to make it. And so that means whatever choices you make are going to mold and shape you into being whatever it is that you wind up being in that given day. And so our past does not have to equal our future. We can change our future if we'll embrace it. And I see people that are unhappy. I see people that are fighting and striving. I've got a longtime friend of mine who his wife is an extremely contentious person. These are believers in Yeshua, or at least they were. He still is. She's not so much anymore based upon what I've seen with her. But she's working so much in the flesh of trying to build him up at one point, and then 5 minutes later she tears him down. And this poor guy is calling me constantly, John, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? She just called me and says she wants to work out our marriage. And now this has been going on for like 17 years now. So this is not something new. And I said to him, I don't trust her. Past behavior is a good indication of future behavior. Can a leopard change its spots? I said to my friend. And I said, I can almost bet my rear end that tomorrow she's going to call you and she's going to revert back to what she was before. And sure enough, she does. And she drags him into court and she's tearing him into pieces, lying and deceiving the court, and just causing him no end of financial troubles as well as emotional turmoil. This ought not be in the body of Messiah. This doesn't come from Yeshua. This comes from directly from the devil appealing to our flesh. And this woman is strictly operating in the flesh. And I've warned this woman, if she doesn't stop, eventually she will go over the cliff. Yahweh is patient. Yahweh is long-suffering. Yahweh is enduring. Yahweh is merciful. And He'll put up with us for a while. But then there'll come a point where He pulls the plug. And she's already starting to see the plug being pulled. The sad part about that is that all the calamity that is now starting to come into her life, she's now, in the last year, she's racked up $80,000 worth of debt and has no money. Most of the time has no food on her table at night, and still finds the energy to persecute her husband. And so she does not respect her husband as her head, as her covering. And so she's paying the price for it. And you would think that when a person gets to that state, financially, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, I can write all kinds of pictures about this, you would think any normal person would say, this is insane. Something is very wrong. This is getting worse. The more I pursue this, it's getting worse. It's not getting better. And you think they would stop in that moment and compose themselves and humble themselves, that Yahweh would hear them from heaven and forgive her of her sins. But she won't do it, because the spirit of pride is so strong inside of her that she will not let her husband win. She will destroy her husband. And I told him about 1.5 years ago, I said to him, you know what? I'm going to tell you what I see as a kind of a vision. I said, picture yourself in a boat that's perhaps 50 feet long. It's a trawler. So you have your main deck. You have a below deck where the engine and all that is down there. And then you have the main deck. And then you have the pilot house where the captain is. And there's a staircase that goes down from the pilot house down into the lower decks. And I said, what your wife is basically doing is she so does not care about her own life. She not only wants to destroy you, she doesn't care if she goes down with the ship. And what she has done is, you as the captain, she has shackled you with handcuffs to the railing, the next floor down. And now she's taken over controls of this vessel, and she's looking, and what she's gone is she's gone down below deck and she's pulled the plug below deck in the engine room, and the vessel is taking on water, and she's driving this boat thrilled to death, because she knows that when that water comes up that staircase, she's going to get the privilege and the honor and the glory of seeing her husband take his last nostril of air before he submerges below the surface. And then the water will come up through the rest of the structure, and the whole thing will sink and she'll go down with it. But she got to see him die, and she got her gratification before she lost her own life. She has a death wish. And you know what? That's exactly what it's been this last year and a half. She could care less about whether she lives or dies. Her whole goal in her life is to destroy her husband. Now, I give you this story to paint a picture. And the picture is that if we're not following Yeshua's ways, and we're not guarding our minds and our hearts, first our hearts, so that our mouths don't speak the kind of cursings into it that we tend to do, then we are going to be in trouble if we don't do that. And this person is not doing that. And that's why they have the kind of problems that they got. So I feel that what John is trying to say is he's trying to give these new believers, mostly they're most new believers, he's trying to give them some basic instructions on how to preserve your crown, how not to allow somebody to take away your crown. After all, what's the point in walking this walk if at the last minute you throw it out the window? We might as well just go out and party like the rest of the world and do what we got to do. And I just feel so strongly, because I see this as a chronic disease in the body of Messiah, where so many people are so dysfunctional in the body of Messiah, they can't even get to the basic concept of rational spiritual thought. They're so in the flesh, and they're so emotional, and they're so angry, and they're so bitter, and they're so full of unforgiveness to the point that they can't even bring themselves to sit down and have a rational discussion. How do I get myself back on track? And I've said it before. Until you hit your rock bottom, you will never begin the process of coming back up to the top. The problem with that is that for the rest of us who are trying to live a sane spiritual life, have to feel the consequences of those of us in the body of Messiah who are behaving this way. And it's painful for us because we have to sit there and watch as this person is like a woman who likes to cut herself. You ever seen these women that they're anorexic, they're so depressed, and their lives are so dark that they mutilate themselves, they cut themselves because it's self-hate. And when we behave in self-hate, we cannot love another human being more than we love ourselves. And if we hate ourselves, we're going to demonstrate that hate to somebody else. So the theme of what John is talking about, continuing with the prior chapters we've been going through, is this idea of how to love brother. The message that we heard from the beginning. Because Torah is about love. Fulfillment of the Torah is love. But if we don't know how to love ourselves, then we certainly can't know how to love somebody else. Well, okay. That's the intro. Let's go ahead and get started. Behold, what manner of love. We're picking up in chapter 3. We're going to go from verse 1 through, I think it's verse 17. I might have that wrong, but we're not going to do the whole chapter today. Actually, it's verse 12. I got a typo. We're going from 1 to 12. Behold, what manner of love the Father has bestowed on us, that we should be called children or sons of Yahweh. Therefore, the world does not know us because it did not know Him. And so when we got people in the body of Messiah who are behaving like the world, it's because they don't have enough of Yeshua in their life that they can behave in a sound spiritual manner like the rest of us are trying to do. And so the goal of the enemy is to use that person to try to unwind the rest of the body. We cannot lose our composure. We must at all costs, no matter what anybody else is doing, cannot allow ourselves to be moved out of our spiritual position. Yahweh has given us a spiritual jurisdictional position to hold. Yeshua says, occupy till I come. That means whatever ground that I've given you, whatever I've given you as a possession, you hold that ground and you don't allow anybody to take any real estate from you. It's yours. I gave it to you. Your responsibility is to hold on to it, because if you lose any of that ground, when you stand before my judgment seat, you're going to have to give an account as to why did you lose this ground. And if you did lose it, why did you not go back and take it back and then some? Why were you not violent enough to take it back? Moving on, verse 2. Beloved, now we are children or sons of Yahweh, and it has not yet been revealed as to render apparent See, it's not rendered apparent to us yet exactly what we're going to be. We have little bits and pieces of what we're going to be, but you know what? Until we actually become glorified beings, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, we're not going to know what that really feels like until the moment it actually happens. So we can only speak of it in a very limited kind of way. What we shall be, but we know that when he is revealed, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. And so let's take a look at this just for a little bit. I'm kind of getting off track just a little bit. We'll come right back. In Revelation chapter 14, verse 1, what we're going to have is the Father's name written on our foreheads. This is a very elite group. This is not just everybody who gets resurrected on Yom Teruah. This is an elite group, in my opinion, based on what I see in Scripture. This is a very specific group that's going to have the name of the Father written on their foreheads. And let me tell you this, any religious group that does not believe in the name of the Father, he's not going to write his name on your forehead if you're rejecting his name. I went through this a couple of weeks ago in the Old Testament. It talks about the Gentiles who refuse to pronounce his name. It's a hostility. It has to be given to you. It has to be revealed to you. It has to be written on your heart. You can't just do it on your own by fiat. We don't have that capacity. So this is a privilege. This is a real privilege to have this. And this is a piece of ground that we can never let go of. We must, at all costs, maintain this thing. Because if you want to be a part of this 144,000, then you're going to have to maintain everything Yahweh has given you, including his name. Let's move on. So, and then I looked, and behold, a Lamb standing on Mount Zion, and with him 144,000 having his Father's name with authority and character written on their foreheads. Need I say any more? A lot of people like to say, even in the Hebraic roots, that the Father's name and the Son's name is not important. Excuse me?
No, very important.
Excuse me? You need to go read your scriptures. In Revelation chapter 3, verses 17 through 13, let's move on with the concept now of which ones I believe, this is my personal opinion, will have the name of the Father written on. And that's this Philadelphians. Because when you look at all 7 eras of the church, all different spiritual conditions of the church in Revelation 2 and 3, the only one that's not reprimanded is the Philadelphians. And they're the ones that don't deny the name. And they've preserved and they've held on to it. They did not let it go. No matter how much persecution, how much ridicule they got from other people, even believers, forget about the world, they did not deny the name. And I believe it's that group with that kind of a spirit of brotherly love. They've really captured the concept of love, of not allowing anything to come out of their mouth that is vile, that could be used against them, that's not of Yeshua. They're going to have the name written on their foreheads. Let's go on and read. And to the angel of the church, as the called out ones, the ecclesia, in Philadelphia, that is the king of Pergamos. I found that to be interesting. Philadelphia also means that there's a king of Pergamos. And we also know that Pergamos is where the throne of Satan is. So isn't it interesting that here in the king of Pergamos, of Philadelphia, is in Pergamos, where Satan's throne is, right there on that piece of real estate. That's ground zero, man. That's ground zero for trying to have the Father's name taken away from you. That's where the rubber really starts to meet the road. They're at ground zero, and yet they still found a way to overcome and maintain themselves. These things says he who is holy, he who is true, he who has the key that closes the lock of David. And if I'm not mistaken, I think the key to David is the spirit of prophecy. Would that not be right, Joshua? I think it's the key, the spirit of prophecy is what unlocks the key of David. I meant to put it in here and I forgot. I don't remember where it is. I think it's in Revelation, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. He who opens and no one shuts, and shuts and no one opens. Verse 8, I know your works. I have set before you an open door that is a portal and an entrance, and no one can shut it. For you have a little strength, and that little strength means a little bit of miraculous power. You're not operating in the fullness of the miraculous power. You have a little bit. In other words, occasionally you have miracles that are happening, but it's not something that's happening every single time. And have kept, as to guard from loss or injury, my word. And in this case, the Greek for the word is divine doctrinal expression of Messiah. Which comes back to Torah, because back in them days, they didn't have the New Testament. They taught from the Torah, or they taught from the Tanakh. And have not denied, contradicted, or refused my name. We are going to be put on the spot, as I've stated in the past. The world is beginning to maneuver people into various groups, social groups around the world. And people are starting to be corralled and isolated into these individual groups. Sooner or later, we will be isolated into a group. And that is decision time. You're going to have to decide where you're going to stand on some of these issues, because you will be put on the spot. And so the sooner you resolve that in your mind, the sooner that becomes a part of your structured belief system, and it will be very difficult to have it removed. So you can't have a casual approach to it. You have to intrinsically lock that into your spirit, where ain't nobody going to take it out. Verse 9, indeed I will make those of the synagogue, which is a meeting place, as the congregation of Satan. Imagine this. Satan has a congregation who say, the word say means to boast. It's a boastful kind of speech. They are Jews. So we got some in the body of Messiah who are claiming to be Jews, and they're not. They really belong to the synagogue of Satan. His congregation. What's that?
In the body of Messiah?
In the body of Messiah.
Okay, I was thinking they were out.
Well, that could be too. You're right. I wouldn't exclude that. It could be on the outside, say within Judaism as well. But here, I think the basic context is well. Let's move on. We'll continue with the context. As belonging to Yahudah, and are not, but lie and deceive through falsehood. So I think there's probably a couple different categories of that if you want to break it down, but that's really not my main point. That just happens to be in the text. Indeed, I will make them come and worship as to kiss the master's hand with reverence and crouch down before your feet to know that I have loved you. Well, let me tell you something. The only person a human being can worship is an Elohim, is Yahweh. But he's saying here that he's going to make them come and worship before our feet. So to me, this ties in with the series that I did on the sons of Elohim. Who are the sons of Elohim? And that ties into that. You have to be a son of Elohim. You have to be a born son of Elohim in order for another human being to come worship you, which means you must be in a glorified state. Anyway, let's move on. Because you have kept my command to preserve in cheerful endurance, I also will keep as to guard from loss or injury of you from the hour of trial, which will be an evil solicitation which shall come upon the whole world to test. And the purpose of that test is scrutinize for examining. To scrutinize and examine. That's why trials come, is because Yahweh wants to know what are we made of when we go through that trial. He wants to scrutinize us. He wants to examine us. What's in your heart? How are you going to behave? How are you going to respond to this experience that is going on in your life? And if you take it patiently, then Yahweh says He finds that commendable. But if you don't take it patiently, you want to murmur and complain, then you're in the other boat. And that means, chances are, in my experience, the trial will continue in your life until we get the point. And when we get the point, and we accept the point of the trial, and we welcome it with joy and gladness, then it goes away. There's no point for it anymore. My wife doesn't have to complain that I don't take out the garbage anymore if I discipline myself, which I'm still guilty of not doing all the time. If I just take out the garbage, I'll never hear it anymore. Right? It goes away. So I got a hard noggin. I just got so many things on my plate, but it's not justification. I still have a responsibility to do it. I didn't agree to that when I got married. Somehow it got put on me afterwards. But okay. Scrutinizing those who dwell on the earth. Oh, okay. Behold, I am coming quickly, without delay, as a surprise. Hold fast, and the word fast means to seize and retain. To seize and retain what you have. Remember what Yeshua said, occupy till I come. Don't lose any real estate. I'm putting you in charge of what I'm giving you. Don't lose it. Okay? What you have that no one may take, to get a hold of violently. The enemy's not coming at you in a state of passivity. He's coming with violence. He may use passive suggestions to try to lure you into something. But let me tell you something. He's quite violent about taking away what you got. He does not want you to become a son of Elohim. That's his worst nightmare. To get a hold violently of your crown, that is a badge of royalty. The crown that you have is of royalty. It is of royalty because you're going to be kings and priests in the kingdom. You're going to reign with him, as that song goes. Verse 12, he who overcomes and conquers to the point of victory. See, we can conquer along the way, but it doesn't mean that you win in the end, because I've seen people drop out of the race 3/4 of the way through. So the key here is to be able to go all the way over that finish line. Not dragging yourself up to the finish line and quitting just before you get there, or your nose gets right to the edge. That means you run over that line with full force and authority. You run over that line with the intent that you're beating everybody that you're racing with. Not that we race against each other. That's not what I mean. We're not to compare ourselves among ourselves. I will make him a pillar in the temple of Yahweh, and he shall go out. Go outside the doors no more. And I find that interesting. I thought about that. You mean to tell me when we go into the kingdom, some of us anyway, we're going to go into the inner chamber area and we're not going out anymore? What will we be doing? What will we be doing that requires us to stay there night and day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? For eternity, I guess. I don't have anything that tells me otherwise. If you're ordained to that position in that governmental authority, I don't see where it would be revoked. But there may be some other explanation. I don't know. I will write on him the name of my Yahweh and the name of the city of my Yahweh, the New Jerusalem. Verse 12, which comes down from heaven, continuing in verse 12, the abode there's a typo, the abode in from my Yahweh, and I will write on him my new name. My new name. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches, or the called out ones. So to me, I don't know about you, but to me, after fighting for so many years that I've been fighting, sometimes I get tired, sometimes I get weary, sometimes I feel like I get wore out. And sometimes I even feel like I want to quit, but you've got to pull up your bootstraps and you've got to become defiant in that moment. I plan to go all the way to the end as best as I can, as best as I know how. And so for me, if I'm going to run this race, I don't want to run the race where I'm shoveling manure in the kingdom behind an elephant. That's not the job I'm aspiring to. I don't want my candle, my glorified body, to flicker like a little candle. I want to be able to be as great in the kingdom as I possibly can. I'm not getting another shot at this. I get to do this once. You all get to do this once. Do it the best you can. That means you're going to have to be on guard, because there are those around us who are not happy. They want to bring you down to their level. It's our job to bring them up, not down. That's true brotherly love. That's the Philadelphian love. It's bearing with them in long suffering and patience. It's not easy. It grieves your heart as it grieves our Father's heart to watch when people are in pain and suffering. So what we've got to do is we've got to understand, why does a person behave that way? If we start asking empowering questions, we'll get empowering answers. Instead of looking at the behavior, look at what caused the behavior. And when you start looking at the cause of the behavior, Yahweh can begin to give you some spiritual strategies on how to seed that person and begin to lift them out of the depressed state that they're in, so that they become functional in the body of Messiah instead of tearing down the body of Messiah. Like the example I gave in the opening statements. In 1 John chapter 3, now coming back, continuing in verse 3, and everyone who has this hope of pleasurable expectation in him purifies with ceremonial and moral cleansing of himself. We all need to go through a cleansing within ourselves. None of us are perfect. I'm not. I'm probably the least of everybody. I got a lot of hang-ups. And we all got to cleanse ourselves. And some of us are so busy looking at what somebody else is doing or not doing, and we're not looking at ourselves to see that we're actually in a more miserable state than they are. How dare us be so arrogant that we can pick on somebody else when we ourselves are more miserable than they are? But that's the deceitfulness of sin. It convinces us that we have the higher moral ground, that we have the right to say and do what we want against another brother or another sister. And yet what we don't realize is that when we are criticizing the other brother and sister, illegitimately I'm going to say, we're speaking against Yeshua that lives in that temple. And we're boasting against Yahweh the Father, who lives in that temple. Maybe it's just a little bit, but he lives there. And what we're saying is, we don't agree or we don't like that person. But Yahweh likes them or loves them enough to decide to live in them, however little bit it might be. And so I feel that in the body of Messiah, we need a transformation. We need to see each other in a completely different way than the world has shown us and has molded and shaped us through our lives. And if we don't have that paradigm shift, we'll continue to behave the way we did yesterday and today, and we'll do the same thing tomorrow, and we'll continue to repeat the pattern of self-sabotage, never coming to the fullness and the full stature of Yeshua and being the full light that we're supposed to be. Let's move on. Verse 4. Whoever commits by transgressing the law, which is sin, also commits lawlessness, which is in violation of the law. And sin is lawlessness and unrighteousness, or Torahlessness. And my whole thrust through this series has been, this is why Christianity has a problem. Because they vehemently are against Torah. Pure and simple. And they are our brothers as far as they are Israel, but they are lost sheep of house of Israel. And it's our job, not with hatred, not with anger, not with malice, not with ill intent, none of those things. We need to make sure that's out of our life before we say a word. But it's our job to speak to them truth. Come out of Babylon. Come out of that sun worship. Come out of pagan worship and come to the true Messiah, Yeshua. Stop with that mixed covenant that you got going on over there. You are the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Come and take your place. We're going to get into this a little bit more as I go on. Yahweh has words to say about this. And you know that he was manifested to take away our sins, and in him there is no sin. Verse 6. Whoever abides in a state of relaxation and expectancy in him does not sin. See, when we're uptight and we're anxious and we're not getting our way in this life, we're not in a state of relaxation. And we're not in a state of expectancy, at least not of him. We're mad because we're expecting something in this life that we're not getting, because Yahweh actually is withholding it from you because we're not in the right attitude. And so he withholds us and we get mad because I should have had this yesterday and I don't have it. Now I'm angry. Now I'm in the flesh. And you're not going to get what you want as long as you have that attitude and you don't have an attitude adjustment. Time to take a chill pill. It's time for cooling minds to prevail. It's time to humble and seek Yahweh while he can still be found. And ask ourselves, am I guilty? We all are. I am. It happens to me. I get overwhelmed in life with things that is way beyond what I can handle. A lot of times it's my own stupidity because I overextend myself. It's my fault. It's not anybody else's fault. It's not Yahweh's fault. It's my fault. Because I should have known what my limit was, and I chose not to do it. And I may have had the right intentions to do it for the right reasons. But in my own stupidity, not really calculating that I really was not in a correct position to be able to do it, I went and did it anyway, and now I'm suffering the consequences. It's my fault. Man up and take responsibility for overextending yourself. Yahweh didn't do it to you. Yahweh didn't tell me to go do it. I decided to do it. And He does give us that privilege to do that, but sometimes it's not in our best interest. And sometimes we do have to draw lines in the sand, and we have to prioritize in our life. In Him does not sin. Whoever sins has neither seen by experiencing through discernment of Him. See, Yahweh cannot be experienced through an intellectual kind of gospel. I find that the intellectual kind of gospel doesn't hold on for a real long time. If you don't have some real spiritual experiences happening with Yeshua and with our Father, your faith is not going to last very long. You've got to go from an intellectual understanding into a real powerful walk where things are really... That's why every week I ask for testimonies. Because everybody else needs to see what's happening in your life so they know what to pray for. Everybody needs to see what's happening in your life so they can give honor and glory to Yahweh, to see that, hey, He's working. This is not just some religion. We're here to praise and worship and a little music, hear a message and go home. That there's a little bit more going on here than that. Because that's where we go from faith to faith and glory to glory. We've got to have testimonies. And we need to expect that those testimonies are going to get greater as time goes on. What happened yesterday happened yesterday. This is today, and tomorrow is tomorrow. I want to see greater things happen. Nor known to speak with understanding of Him. And there are many that speak of Him, and even He said, many will come in my name saying, I'm the Messiah. They speak of Him. He still says, I still don't know Him. Didn't have a relationship. Because why? They practice Torahlessness. They're against Torah. Now, when I say they're against Torah, what I mean is they're against the first 4. At some level, they're keeping the last 6 at some level. And I give credit for that. But we know what is the first and great commandment. And what they're doing over there is mostly the second great commandment. But it's the first one we need to get right first. In this part of the body of Messiah, where there is no dual covenants going on of Hagar. This needs to be a pure covenant walk that we're walking in. And we've got to continue to strive to define what does that mean for us. That's what I try to do here each week. Little children or infant darlings, let no one deceive by seducing you. He who practices righteousness of equity of character. You see, and when you have equity of character, no vile stuff is going to be coming out of your mouth. That's what equitable character is. I can take it to the bank. I can cash it in. I know the person is honorable. And they don't have any wickedness coming out of their mouth. This is what we got to shoot for. Is righteous and is holy and is innocent just as he is righteous. He who commits by observing none of these things sin is of, as to the point where the action proceeds from, is of the devil. Because ultimately, that action that that person's indulging in the sin comes from the devil, from Hasatan. It's an evil solicitation. And the person says, yeah, I think that feels pretty good, that sounds pretty good, let's run with it. And that's why they behave that way. Because they're not guarding the doorpost of their heart. And when we don't guard the doorposts of our heart, this is what happens. The real key and the real essence of what I'm saying is our heart has to get transformed. You can sit here and you can give yourself affirmations all day long. I will not do this. I will not do that. I will not do the other. And that's fine and good. But at some point, the affirmation has to become one where it's intrinsic, where you really believe it with all your being. It's part of your faith belief system and it's written on your heart. Then your nature changes. And that which you used to be easily seduced into yesterday can't be done today. You don't have to think about it. See, the other one you have with the affirmations, you have to actually think about it. What I'm talking about is going away from thinking about it, and it's part of your nature. It just comes out of you like it did with Yeshua. It just comes out. Because that's who you are. And you're not trying to be something that you're not. This is who I am. There's a transformation that took place. Your nature has changed. Okay, so let's move on. For the devil has sinned, missed the mark from the beginning. For this purpose, the Son of Yahweh has manifested that he might destroy the works of the devil. And if he lives inside of us, and then it behooves us to destroy the works of the devil in our life too, with his help. But too many of us are scared to death and we're petrified to challenge those things in our life that's holding us down, that's defeating us on a daily basis. You wake up in the morning, why do I feel miserable? Gee, let me count the ways. It's not really that hard. The hard part is saying, I'm tired of this, and I don't want it anymore. And today is going to be a new day in my life, and I'm going to be so focused on challenging myself to make the kind of changes that I got to make so that I am not that same person anymore, because I am done. Until you get to that point, you're going to run the same rat race. We're all going to run that same rat race. It won't change. Whoever has been born or conceived of Yahweh does not sin. As an offense. For his seed, which is interesting, in the Greek it means male sperm as offspring, remains in a state of relaxed expectancy in him. And he cannot sin because he has been born and regenerated of Yahweh. Have we been regenerated? At some level, yes. To the degree that we need to be? No. I speak for myself. I haven't. Sometimes I get down and out on myself because I think I should be further along than where I am. And the danger to some of that is that you can beat up on yourself so much to the point that you don't even believe that the work that's being done in you is being done by Yeshua, and he's bringing you along at the pace he wants to bring you along. And so you defeat yourself because you're beating yourself up. Going back to the self-mutilation again, self-hatred. It's a fine line there that we play. Because on one hand, you can't be complacent and say, he'll forgive me and he'll let it go and, I'll move on. You can't have that attitude. But you can't have the other one either, where you're beating yourself up all the time, because Yahweh isn't going to reward that one either. But you do need to challenge yourself. You do need to tell yourself, that was not acceptable. I should never have said that. I should never have done that. But then ask for the forgiveness and move on. Don't beat yourself up to a pulp and humiliate yourself and tear yourself down. Yahweh doesn't want that. Isn't that what he told Job when Job was laying on the ground? He said, get up, stand up like a man and declare a covenant to me. I created you in my image according to my likeness. What are you doing laying there on the ground like that? He doesn't want us to feel sorry for ourselves like that. That's not a faith. So we have to become more strategic in understanding how we're to walk this walk and what questions we ask ourselves and why do I respond the way that I do, and start making the kind of changes that the true love of Yeshua can really work inside of us to the degree that no matter how bad somebody is, you're not going to be seduced into that spirit. You overcome it, it doesn't overcome you. You have to take a no prisoners mentality at the end of the day. You will not stand for it. You will not let yourself down to that level under no way, shape, or form. Okay. In him, okay, I already read that. Verse 10. In this the children of Yahweh and the children of the devil are manifest. So at some point we should be able to see the distinct difference between the two parties. And if you can't, and today sadly that's the problem, because what a lot of people are doing is they're saying there is no difference. We're all one. Not in my book. Maybe in your book, but not in mine, because my scriptures are telling me all kinds of different stuff is different than what you're saying. But there's a distinct difference, or there should be a distinct difference. It might be minute at times, but there should be a distinct difference. And you should know how to recognize that distinct difference. I try to bring these things out every couple of weeks or so. Whoever does not practice righteousness is not of Yahweh, nor is he who does not love in a social and moral manner his brother. We have a moral obligation to love our brothers and our sisters in a social and a moral manner, both. Scripture says, greet each other with a holy kiss. When we come together on Sabbath, most of you who are not repelled by me will allow me to give you a kiss on the cheek. I won't do it to Pedro, but I will give him a hug. But you know what I'm talking about. The thing is that it's a genuine affection. We do that. It's a social thing. But you do it because, look at this crowd. Look at this crowd. Come on, look at this crowd. We got gringos in here, which I'm one. We got Jews, we got Gentiles, we got Latinos, we got Hamites, we've got, what do we got? We got Russians or Ukrainians. I'm sorry, Jane. I got to be correct, politically correct. We've got some Polish people in here. But naturally speaking, we probably all in the world would not really connect with each other. I certainly think you guys wouldn't connect with me, that's for sure. But it takes Yahweh's Spirit to bring us all together and harmonize and get along and support one another. And so it takes the Spirit of Yahweh to be able to do that. But we have to be willing participants to do that. Even for the times when some of us don't agree with each other. We still have to love, and we're compelled to love one another either, and realize, and what I do is this, I say, you know what, that's not a salvation issue. As far as I'm concerned, if it's not a salvation issue, I'm not going to argue over it. But if it is a salvation issue, I'm going to get out my 2x4, and I'm going to hit you over the head lovingly. Because to me, that's where it really makes the difference. But whether you like chocolate ice cream and I like vanilla, I don't have the right to tell you that chocolate ice cream is not as righteous as vanilla, and vice versa. So we got to we got to learn how to pick these kind of things and not allow those things to destroy the brotherly love, the Philadelphian spirit that we're achieving to try to get. Verse 12, not as Cain, who was of the wicked one and murdered his brother. And why did he murder him? Because his works were evil and his brothers were righteous. So let's look at Mark chapter 7, verse 20 through 23. And basically, we're going to look at the works of the devil. And he said, what comes out of a man that defiles and ceremonially profanes a man? Because, we know the text, they're arguing about the fact they weren't cleaning the bowls, and they got a little bit of dirt that was going in them, and they thought that made them unclean. From within, out of the heart, which are the thoughts and feelings of men, proceed or discharges and evil thoughts, which are internal considerations and imaginations. See, evil thoughts come from the imagination. How many times do we think something negative of somebody that's not even true and it comes from our imagination? I'm sure all of us can think about it. You don't have the facts. You don't have the facts, but your imagination is telling you it's got to be this. Boy, and how many times has that happened to me, and I then found out the facts, and I'm like, I'm glad that I didn't open my big trap, because I would have gotten in trouble, and my foot would have been wedged way deep down inside my throat. But at the end of the day, what it says to me is, I should not have had that thought to begin with. Shouldn't have even entertained it. Should have exercised that right on the spot. A true son of Elohim who really is seeking true righteousness and true love will crucify that thing right on the spot, because it breaks with Yahweh's commands on how we are to behave. Just because it didn't come out of my mouth doesn't make it less unrighteous. Matter of fact, many things that don't come out of our mouth we try to conceal, and that does make it more unrighteous. At least if you say it out of your mouth, you're telling people exactly how you feel, even if it's wrong. But when we're trying to conceal it, that's not a good thing. So let's move on. Adulteries, fornications, which are idolatries, murders. And murdering, coming back to what I was saying from the beginning, this woman who is persecuting her, I failed to say he's handicapped, handicapped husband who had a stroke a few years back, was paralyzed on one side. He has to try to take care of himself now because they're not living together. The stuff that's coming out of her mouth is she's killing him every single day. She's destroying him with the words out of her mouth. And a wife and a husband should not be trying to destroy the other for a lot of different reasons. But that's what's happening. When those words come out of our mouth, we are destroying the other person. It's murder. It's killing. And we're forbidden to murder or to kill. At least in the wrong concept. Okay, so let's move on. Thefts, covetousness, wickedness, which is evil intents of depravity that is designed to be hurtful. How many of us know that Yahweh is telling us that something we have, whether it's a word, an object, whatever it is, He wants us to bless somebody else with it? So I'm not going to do it. I ain't going to do it. I don't like what this person did. I don't like what they said. And I'm not going to do it. How dare you tell me to do this or give that? Evil intents of depravity that is designed to be hurtful. Deceit, lewdness, which is being filthy. An evil eye, which is a jealous side glance. Oh yeah, really, Carmen? Huh. That side glance tells you everything you need to know. Doesn't it? Blasphemy, evil speaking, or vilifying a person. Pride, which is one of the big ones, which is elevating ourselves above another person. And why do people do that? In my estimation, from studying human nature over the years, the reason why a person elevates themselves above another person is because they really have a low self-esteem complex. So this is a fleshly thing now. So if I elevate myself over top of somebody else and dominate them, it makes me feel good when I know I feel bad. I've got power. I've got authority. And I can control. Because I'm out of control. And because I'm out of control, I want to control. This is a sick mind when we do this. It's not of Yeshua. Yeshua is not about control of anybody. Most of you know by now, I don't try to control anybody in here. I'm a brother just like everybody else. I might be standing up here speaking, but I'm not above or beneath anybody else. And if I do something that's not right, I expect somebody to come to me and say, now John, because I believe we're all priests here. And as priests, you all have a moral responsibility to say something to me or somebody else if something is not right in your estimation, or at least get clarification, At least get clarification. And we still may not agree, but at least we have the dialogue. And through the dialogue, exercising correct spiritual principles in that dialogue, even if we can disagree, we can still love each other at the end of the day. Occasionally my wife and I disagree, but I've learned the hard way over the years, never disagree with my wife. I've learned to be politically correct, even when I don't like it. She's taught me a lot. She really has. I think she's taught me more than I've taught her. I'm just now, after all these years, figuring out why Yahweh put her in my heart and in my life. Okay, so let's move on. Foolishness. This is Anthony's word. He's got a word that's called foolitis. Foolitis. Don't catch the disease of foolitis. Well, here's what foolitis is. Reckless and egotistical senselessness. That's what the spirit of foolitis is. And after all, that's where pride works from. It works from an ego, doesn't it? Verse 23, all these things, and these things means which are a state of degeneracy of the original virtue. So what was that? Whatever Yahweh originally imputed to you when He called you, if you digress from that, you have then come into the state of degeneracy, because you've degenerated from a level of righteousness that you were called from to when you first received Yeshua, and now you're going backwards. And that's what evil things means. Come from within and defile and ceremonially profanes a man. That's what Yeshua is saying. Luke chapter 6, 43 through 45, for a good, morally beautiful tree. I found that to be interesting. I never realized that a tree that is good, he related to in the Greek, really means morally beautiful. Does not bear bad, morally rotten and worthless fruit, nor does a bad tree bear good fruit. See, at some point we've all got to be objective in our walk, and we've got to start asking ourselves, what just came out of my mouth, or what I felt in my heart, even if my mouth didn't say it, is that good or is it bad? Is it morally beautiful or is it immorally rotten and worthless? And we have to be a committee of one to bring ourselves into subjection, bring our minds. The scripture says, thank you, the delivery boy. Thank you. We've got to be a committee of one to ask ourselves these very important questions. Which means we have to develop a conscience. And loving a brother means that you can only love your brother as much as you love yourself. And you can only love yourself to the degree that you have a relationship that Yeshua has imputed his love to you. It's a transference of a spirit. So you can't love another person any more than you love yourself. Or can you hate another person as much as you hate yourself? Sure you can. Because if your life is miserable and it's dysfunctional and it's not working in Yeshua, you're going to become disillusioned. And especially if you see somebody else who is happy, you're going to want to drag them down, carnally speaking. Carnally speaking. Okay, let's move on. Verse 44. For every tree is known by its fruit, which is private fruit. So each and every one of us have our own private fruit that Yahweh examines. Whatever fruit's on Pedro's tree has nothing to do with the fruit on my tree. He's going to examine Pedro's fruit, and Pedro's going to be held accountable to what kind of quality of fruit is on his tree. Has nothing to do with what's on mine or yours. Separate, it's private. For men do not gather figs from thorns, nor do they gather grapes from a bramble bush, which is a briar shrub. A good who is a beautiful, beneficial man out of the good treasure, which is a deposit of wealth of his heart, in thoughts and feelings brings forth and produces good. So we all need to look inside of our hearts, and we need to try to examine our hearts. Do I have a good treasure? Or do I have a bitter, miserable, wretched treasure inside there that needs some serious cleaning? And it needs to be replaced with something that's profitable, that Yahweh can use, and that we can use. And an evil who is diseased and calamitous and vicious man, out of the evil treasure of his heart brings forth evil. For out of the abundance and surplus of the heart his mouth speaks. A lot of times if we just stay quiet and we just listen to what people say, you can get a pretty good idea what's in their heart. I've heard a lot of people tell me, you don't know what's in my heart. Oh yeah, I know what's in your heart. If I listen to you for a few minutes, I can tell what's in your heart. And if you have the spirit of discernment, Yahweh can get you to read between the lines and pick up what's really going on. When the other person who's actually spilling what they're spilling has no clue. Because the flesh doesn't have that kind of discernment to understand spiritual things, because they're spiritually discerned. The carnal mind of man cannot perceive the spiritual things of Yahweh, and neither indeed can be. Okay, in Romans chapter 28, verse 32 through 28 through 32, the works of a degenerate mind. And even as they did not like to retain Yahweh in their knowledge, which is discerning recognition of Yahweh, he gave them over and surrendered to imprison them to an unapproved and worthless rejected mind. So, in my book, what I'm getting from this is a person who seemed to know Yahweh, seemed to know Yeshua, and they became degenerates. They started going back the other way. And so he gave them over to a worthless, rejected mind, an unapproved mind. To do those things which are not fitting, and the word fitting means to receive towards what should be becoming. In other words, beneficial to us. That's where we should be coming from. Being filled with all unrighteousness, injustice, and morally wrong, sexual immorality, wickedness, which is evil intents of depravity that is designed to be hurtful, covetousness of greed, maliciousness, which is depravity. See, when somebody's malicious, it's because they want to deprive you of what it is you need or what you seek. I'm not giving it to you. You can cry and whine all you want. I'm not giving it to you because I enjoy having power over you. I enjoy manipulating you. I enjoy controlling you. I enjoy watching you scream and writhe in pain and affliction. I enjoy that because it makes me feel good. Man, if that ain't the flesh, I don't know what is. Full of envy, which is ill-willed jealousy, murder, strife, which is quarreling and contention, deceit, which is to trick by craftiness, evil-mindedness, which means bad character. They are whisperers that are basically slanderers. Backbiters, to talk against, haters, not showing respect for and of Yahweh. And that goes back to what I was saying before. Not showing respect for and of Yahweh. Because if another brother or sister has Yeshua living inside them, they are a temple, and Yahweh's Spirit lives within inside them. And if you're speaking to them in a very unloving kind of way, I'm not saying you can't correct, but it has to be done in love. And it has to be done in respect, because Yahweh residing inside that person. And if you're treating them, mistreating them, and you're doing it in the wrong kind of way, you're defiling that person's temple with your words, which is causing an offense to Yahweh who resides there. Which basically, what are we really saying? What we're saying is when we do stuff like that, I don't believe Yahweh lives inside of you. No, now you're judging to condemnation. And we don't have the right to do that. We have a right to judge and make a judgment, but not to condemnation. We don't. Only the righteous judge has the right to do that. And so we have to be careful, because as Yeshua says, judge not lest you be judged, and it will be measured back to you and then some. So not only will it not come back on you, but he's going to add penalties and interest with it. I've been there, done that. That ain't fun. I got out of that business a long time ago. I just got tired of getting my butt whooped. Okay, so let's move on. Of Yahweh, violent, with insults, proud, appearing to be above others, boasters, one who brags, inventors, who contrives of evil things, disobedient, unpersuadable, and stubbornly disobedient to the point of rebellion to their parents, undiscerning, who are unintelligent. There are some people that I talk to, they just don't get it. I mean, I try to write it out in big letters. I try to spell it, be grammatically correct. I try to come at it from this angle, this angle, this angle. I try to do it for every way that I possibly can. I still don't understand it. Now, either they're not called, and so it's not being revealed to them, or they have been called, but they're being stubborn, and they're being arrogant, and their mind cannot be freed up because it's got a stronghold in there that cannot be freed up to understand the spiritual concept. And so until that stronghold is removed from that person's life, they're not going to understand. And that means for us who are on the receiving end of watching all this pain and suffering, which grieves us, we have to have the spiritual tools that Yahweh has given us and seek the spiritual wisdom and discernment. How do I get to the nuts and bolts of what's going on in this person? How do I help them transform the way they see themselves? How do I get to the root of the stronghold that is buried deep inside that person's mind, their will, and their emotions? Because it's either that, or you're going to get so frustrated you're going to be throwing your hands up in the air saying, I give up. And man, I feel like I want to give up all the time. And then Yahweh says, you know what's going to happen if you give up? You think it's bad now? Go ahead and give up. Oh, no, I got it. I got it. Forget of it. Strike it. I didn't ever said it. I repent. I really don't much like this job, but I got to find a way to like it. You know, the prophet Jeremiah, if you watch Jeremiah in his dialogue with Yahweh, he didn't like his job. He was preaching to a people that, you know, they want to kill him. They didn't want to hear anything he had to say. And Yahweh basically told him, did I call you to say what I told you to say to Israel because they were going to change? No. My calling you to be a prophet and talk to them had absolutely nothing to do or was contingent upon them changing. So don't give me this line that you're tired of this and you don't want to do it anymore because you're not seeing changes. When I called you as a prophet and I anointed you a prophet, I didn't tell you they were going to change. I gave you a job to do. So you just got to do it. And you got to like it. You need to go back and find your love in what I gave you from the beginning because you lost it. It has nothing to do with anybody changing. I sent you to give a warning. And they're not going to hear. And then calamity is going to come on them and your job is done. If a few of them hear it, great. But what I called you to do was not contingent upon anybody changing. I never made you that promise. So same for us. When we have to deal with somebody who's contentious and has a lot of disagreements or anger issues or all other kind of things that we pointed out, your job to do what you're supposed to do is not contingent upon whether they change or not. You still have a job to do. You still have a responsibility. Okay, so let's move on. Untrustworthy, which is treacherous, unagreeable to breaking covenant. Interesting, that word in the Greek. Breaking covenant. They're not willing, they easily break covenant. How many people do we know that their word doesn't mean anything? They promise this, they promise that, they don't ever follow through. They break covenant. Treacherous, untrustworthy is treacherous, unagreeable to breaking covenant. Unloving, without natural affection to family, unforgiving, and unmerciful. I was brought up in a family that did not have affection. Now, when I say that, I mean in a physical way. They didn't kiss, they didn't hug, they didn't tell you a lot of stuff. Did they love me? Yeah, because on Christmas they gave me gifts and stuff like that. So they had their ways of showing that they love me, but on a physical kind of way or out of their mouth, I never heard that. I grew up like that. So to me, when people would start coming up and hugging me and stuff like that, it was quite uncomfortable. It was quite uncomfortable. My flesh didn't like that. My wife, who's a very affectionate person, helped to break down a lot of that stuff over the years. I'm still working on it. I'm an old dog, it's not easy to teach old dog new tricks. But I'm still trying to work on that. But the thing is, I make a conscious decision, fight through that stronghold that was instilled in you when you were a very young boy. And you grew up with that. And so it's not easy. But I've determined that it may be for me, but for me it's more important for the other person. It's more important for the other person. Because I've had people in the past tell me, well, why does John not do this or that? And I see that they feel like offended or rejected. And I'm like, man, that was not my intent. But because I didn't hug them or I didn't kiss them on the cheek or whatever the case was, that's how they took it. And so I said, you know what? I've got to change that. It's painful. It's hurtful for me. But I got to do it. And that's what we got to do. If we really love the other person as much or more than ourselves, then we'll just do it. Even though the natural body is screaming and yelling at you saying, I don't like this. Okay, but go back to sleep. You're the dead man. This is a live Yeshua living inside me and he's compelling me to do this. I'm going to do it even though my mind is telling me don't do it. Okay. Without natural affection to family, unforgiving, unmerciful, who knowing as one marked with understanding the righteous judgment of Yahweh, that those who practice such things are deserving of death. Not only do they the same, but also approve with gratification those who practice them. So in other words, they encourage others to do what they're doing, which is not good. Not good. And that reminds me of going back to Matthew chapter 5, verse 19 through 21, where those who break the commandments and teach men to do it, they're not getting in. They're just not getting in. Mark, chapter 12, 29 through 31, you can only love someone else to the point you love yourself as a theme. Yeshua answered the first in order of importance. See, this is what Christianity misses. In order of importance. All the commandments is hear, Shema, give an ear or an audience to, O Israel, Yahweh, our Elohim, Yahweh is one. And you shall love socially and morally Yahweh with all your heart, with all your complete of your heart, thoughts and feelings with all your soul. And so it's funny, I've been in Messianic Judaism for years, and I would talk to the rabbis and they would say the Shema and blah. I said, well, how do you define that? Well, you love him with passion and you shout out his name and you dance, and I said, that's not what it's talking about. It includes that. That's not what it's talking about. What does it mean? Don't make idols. Don't bow down and worship idols. Don't take Yahweh's name in vain so that it comes to nothing, and don't defile the Sabbath. And they look at me like, I never heard that in my life. I said, you're a rabbi? You never heard of that? Look at the last 6 commandments. Love your neighbors yourself. And so we'll go on. Let's move on so we can see. With all your mind, imagination, and understanding, with all your strength and force, this is the first and great commandment. So we got to get them in the right order, because it tells us to get them in the order of importance. And Christianity does not do this. And the second in order of importance, in other words, it comes second. It doesn't come first, as it does in the church. Like it is this: you shall love your neighbor as yourself in the same manner as you do to yourself. So the last 6 commandments is a relationship man to man. Christianity, in a lot of ways, is fairly good at that. I have to give them credit for that, and I will. But they're worshiping man. They're not worshiping Yahweh. When you get it in the wrong order and you negate the Shema, the first and great commandment, you're worshiping man, because you're spending so much time relating to him and honoring him, but you won't be honoring Yahweh with the first 4 commandments. So in my book, the way I see it through deductive reasoning, it's false righteousness. Am I saying it's bad not to respect your man? No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm talking purely in the sense of in the order of importance. Okay, so let's move on. There is no other commandment greater than these. In Ezekiel chapter 11, verse 17 through 21 is the change of heart that I'm talking about. This spirit of Philadelphia. The true love, how this has to come about, and what Yahweh is going to do. He says He's going to do a great work in the end time. And I see that He is doing that. But it's those of us who are conquering these areas in our life and are putting on the Philadelphian spirit of love that puts us in this position and responsibility that those who are coming in who are dysfunctional, who have been hurt by the church, they've been scarred, and they're coming in very dysfunctional, doctrinally even coming in dysfunctional. It's for those of us to maintain our composure and our love and our patience and our long suffering and help them along to understand and make sense of this call that they've been called to that's greatly turned their lives upside down. Therefore, say, thus says Yahweh Elohim, I will gather, collect, and assemble you from the peoples. And this is interesting because the word peoples in the Hebrew is from those tribes of Israel. See, He's not bringing all of Israel back right now. He's going in and He's cherry picking the elect. He's calling the first fruits out of all the nations where the lost sheep of the house of Israel are. At the end, when the millennium gets set up, then He'll bring the rest of them. But right now, He's calling them out of the tribes of Israel. Assemble you from the country where you have been scattered, and I will give you the land of Israel. And they will go there, and they will take away all of its detestable, idolatrous things, and all its abominations, which are morally disgusting from there. Then I will give them one, united as one heart, with feelings and consent that will put. So what He's doing is He's going to unite as Echad our hearts. Whatever Michelle says, I'm saying the same thing. What Anthony's saying, I'm saying the same thing. Where there's going to come a point where there's going to be a solid unity within this Philadelphian group, because they've decided, I'm going to take on that kind of a spirit. I want Yahweh's name written on my forehead. I want to be a part of that 144,000. I want to be that bride. And I'm going to do whatever it takes to put myself in alignment to taking on that kind of a spirit. But what Yahweh is going to do is He's going to put that into your heart so that it becomes a craving and a desire. And you'll only be able to do it if He puts that in your heart. Not everybody's going to have that. And so you will come to a point where you say, what I did not consent to yesterday, I consent to it today. I'm in agreement today. I was bucking and fighting yesterday, but I'm in agreement today. Whatever you want to do, Yahweh, I'm yours and you are mine, as the song goes. And I will put a new, fresh spirit within the center of them and take as to turn off, like a switch, the stony heart out of their flesh. See, sometimes some of us are bucking and fighting so hard, we're causing so much trouble in our life. Sometimes it's actually a good thing, because you're getting the exact medicine that you need. Because the more you inflict this damage on yourself, Yahweh can use it to His advantage. Because there's going to come a time where you can become so scarred and so hurted by all the things that you've been going through, that you've become so dysfunctional in your life, that finally He's going to turn the switch and it's going to go off. And all of a sudden the light bulb is going to come on one day and you're going to say, I think I got it. I think I understand it. Why did I not see this before? It has nothing to do with you. It has to do with the fact that all this dysfunction in our lives has finally brought us to the point where Yahweh has finally decided, you're scarred so badly, I'm now going to turn off the switch and I'm going to give you a heart of flesh. Now you're going to see it, now you're going to understand it, and now you're going to embrace it, where you couldn't do it before. And that is a sign that I am Yahweh. And that it's not your work, and it's not any man's work, it's my work that I'm doing in you. It's not by power, it's not by might, it's by my Spirit, thus saith Yahweh Elohim. Okay, let's pick up in verse 20. That, for the purpose that they may walk, pursue, we got to get this, we got to be pursuing in my statutes and appointed customs, and keep, by hedging about with thorns, my judgment, which is mishpat, which is judicial divine law. Brethren, friends, this is the Torah. This is the Torah. We cannot negate the Torah. We must have the first and great commandment. The second one is nothing without it. It's obsolete without it. You have to have that divine love that comes from Yahweh, that agape love, in order to be able to understand that, to impart it to your brother or your sister. And do them, and they shall be my people, and I will be their Elohim. Notice he's saying that when this occurs, that's when he declares that they shall be my people, and I will be their Elohim. Because at that point, we are a Echad. We are the brotherly love. We are the Philadelphian love of the Philadelphian spirit that I have been talking about. This is what we should be striving after. This is what we should be pursuing. We should be hungry in our heart to the point that we can't take it anymore, that we cry out to Yahweh Elohim and say, please change my heart. I can't live like this anymore. This is what this group comes to. They prepare themselves before the tribulation. They become ready for the tribulation. They become marked with Yahweh's name on their foreheads. In verse 21, but as for those whose hearts follow the desire of their detestable things and their abominations, I will recompense their deeds on their own heads, says Yahweh Elohim. Seriously, brethren, is this what you want to find yourself relegated to? If you continue to have a complacent spirit and a complacent heart and you really just don't care anymore, is this what you want Yahweh to classify you as? Because you're holding on to your detestable things, which are a hindrance from you having this transformation of this spirit that I've been talking about in this message? When does the hunger set in? When does the desire set in? When does the connection of these two dots get made in the body of Messiah? Brethren, please, I plead with you to think on these things, to meditate on these things. Have you come to a point in your life where you can't take it anymore? You see the world is falling apart, and yet you continue on as if it was like any other day, and that life will just continue on. Surely you know in your heart of hearts things are coming to an end.
It's time to get cleaned up. It's time to ask Yahweh to put a new heart and a new spirit within you, that this transformation can take place, that truly you will have the spirit of the Philadelphian. This is what we should be pursuing. This is what we should be seeking. This should be our mindset. There should be nothing else that should get in the way of that. It should be very clear by now, this transformation must take place, and anything short of that just will not do. I implore you to pray and meditate on this message and think in these terms and begin to set your heart and your mind, your will, and your emotions in this direction before it's too late, before the opportunity has passed you by and it has been given to somebody else, because you have decided to desire the detestable things and the abominations which prevented you from receiving this transformation of your heart. In Yahweh's mighty name, in the name of Yahshua HaMashiach, I ask him to bless you with this spirit. In his name we pray. Amen.